lesson, we're going to talk about growing your own herbs and produce. One of my favorite things to do. There's really no substitute for the super fresh herbs that you grow by yourself, or even when you buy them, you can really taste the difference in your cooking, but they're so easy to grow. Why not do it yourself? Now, one of the most common kitchen plants that people talk about is the aloe, and for good reason. The aloe plant is pretty, it's easy to grow, and when you get burned in the kitchen, just snip off a piece of that aloe, and that gel in there has been a real help in soothing burns. And I've used this so many times just because I get burned so often, but it's really useful, and I think every kitchen should have them. So grow your own, put it in a windowsill, and you can divide it easily and get more plants from it. But what people don't always realize is that you can actually get more plants from your produce. For example, spring onions are some of the easiest plants to regrow. And so we're going to eat the greens, right? So we might as well keep growing the bottom parts instead of throwing them away. And all I really do is, you don't even have to chop them, you just use some scissors. And because you're going to eat this and chop that up, all you have to do is kind of go down to the white part of it and stick these in water. That's all you do. And then just stick these in a windowsill, and within days, you start to see that they sort of grow from this part here. You'll start to see something, sort of popping up, and you just let it do its thing. Don't bother with it. Just change the water every few days or so, and then pretty soon you'll be doing the same exact thing that I'm doing right here, but just with the newly grown plants. And isn't that so cool? Because then it's free and fresh, and you know exactly where it's come from, and it's naturally organic that way. Now you can do the same thing with lettuce. This is my favorite, and I like to do this in the spring because it doesn't work when it's too hot outside unless you have some temperature controlling going on indoors. But for most lettuce, like romaine, green leaf lettuce, anything with this bottom, I always, when I get it home from the grocery store, and it has to be organic or it typically doesn't work so well, you just cut this bottom off, find a sort of wider rim glass depending on the type of, the size of the bottom of the lettuce, and just stick that in there and let the bottom touch the water. And then leave this in the windowsill with your onions for several days, and you'll start to see the same thing happen that will happen in the onions, where in the middle of that, you'll see some growth kind of spreading. And after some time, it'll start to look like these lettuce leaves. And then what you can do is then plant that outdoors, or even in like little window boxes in your kitchen. If it's warm enough, but not too warm, you'll get new lettuce leaves. And it's so wonderful because you can keep snipping the top and things will grow. And it's just lovely. You just keep getting these baby salad greens, or if you put it outside in your garden, you'll actually get a whole new plant. Speaking of whole new plants, I think what I see all the time on, social media and stuff is, people trying to grow avocados. And, I've had luck over the years with sprouting avocado seeds because I love avocados and I love trying to grow the plant, but I don't live in a warm climate. So, I always think, well, what would I do with a full-grown avocado plant? But let me tell you, it's a really great endeavor to try. So when you pick an avocado, you really have to stick 2 toothpicks into the seed on each side and then let it hang in water. So you have to change this water often, and you have to be really, really patient with this because it takes time. I like to put it in this little greenhouse to give it some warmth because it's a warm weather loving plant. And what starts to happen is that the avocado seed starts to split, and you just want to keep letting it split, because eventually what happens is that you start to see the leaf kind of sprouting out the top, and that's a really exciting moment because if you keep letting it sprout and keep letting it grow and grow and grow until that pit sort of falls off into the water, this is what you can get. This is my avocado plant, and it's I think it's about 5 to 6 months old now, and I may never be able to plant it as a tree because I don't live in warm climate and I don't have a huge greenhouse, but it's a beautiful plant, and I think greenery in the home is a happy thing. It makes me happy, it cleans the air, and I just love it, and I feel so proud of it because it grew, just from the seed, and so it's really special. So, try it out, try your hand. You know, a lot of times it's just a little TLC, and yes, I do talk to the plants sometimes. But there's good reason. I mean, I think that they provide so much back from you, and in terms of these herbs, there's just no substitute for the flavor that these guys give. And for example, basil, sometimes, you know, if you're going to make a caprese salad, you just can't get away with it with dried basil. You have to use fresh. The flavor is, or the smell, the aroma is amazing. Now, this is another plant that you can regrow. What you do is cut the stem like I did, and you want to give it a clean cut. Snip that off, and you want to take off any leaves that could get into the water, because then that just makes the plant mold, and you want to make sure you're not getting any moldiness going on. So with basil, one of the easiest plants to reproduce, you simply just stick it in water. That's it, in a sunny window. And again, you have to have patience because it will take time, but the roots will come from the bottom, and you let the roots kind of proliferate and grow and grow and grow, and then you can replant that basil. So once you get all those roots, stick it in some dirt, give it a good fertilizer, and by the summertime, you can put this in your garden. So isn't that amazing? Never buy basil again. Thyme is a little harder to propagate, but it's still possible. It's just that it needs a very dry climate and dry environment. So I tend to not propagate this plant too much. I just try to keep it alive all winter. So I'll usually buy the plant or grow it from seed, but if you keep it in the garden, it actually comes back every year. So if you want to keep it inside, you just kind of have to keep it dry. Well, of course, water it, but it doesn't like too much water. And there's no substitute for fresh thyme in cooking either. Makes amazing chicken. It's amazing in soups. And it just smells good when you walk by it. So you really want to take care of this plant. But if you decide to stick it in the garden, it should come back. I planted one plant in my garden, and now I have an entire section of thyme that just keeps coming back again and again and again. Now, same with rosemary. Rosemary is a gorgeous plant. I love it with lamb. I love it in all kinds of things, but it can be a little tricky to propagate. The thing with it is that you have to take all of those leaves off and then stick it in some water and then put it in a greenhouse so it keeps warm, and you may even want to put a plastic bag over it. But I suggest just doing this in the garden and letting it come back year after year if it will. And if you live in a drier climate, that could happen. So we'll just stick it back in the dirt. It actually might regrow. Okay, now mint. Mint is a lot of people's favorite plant, but not for gardeners, because once you plant it, it goes everywhere. And so that's not a very happy thing for people who want to grow other things, because it tends to suffocate other plants. But I do put it in containers in my garden, in large containers, so I let it grow and I leave it in the winter, and it comes back every year. So no need to worry about it. But I also want some in my house because I want to just grab it in the kitchen and make tea with it and stuff like that. So I use these, I recycle my aluminum cans like for cocoa and things like that, and just give it its own container, and stick it in here, and it just smells lovely. And especially in the winter when you need a little pick-me-up, mint is a great thing to have in the house. This is a very special plant, and I don't know, many people who have it, but this was a gift from a friend, and it's a curry plant. And so when you rub the leaves, you actually smell curry, which is amazing. And I'd never really seen the plant. I'd only seen the curry leaves in the store. And the leaves should get larger before using them in cooking, but basically you just snip them off and add them to dishes to add the curry flavor. So that's pretty interesting. And so what I would encourage is that you talk to your friends about the plants that they have and you might want, and you start sharing plants with your friends and neighbors. And that's the way all gardeners have been gardening for centuries, is that exchange of seeds, exchange of leaves, exchange of plants, and propagating things on your own. It's fun to experiment, and there's, like I've said a couple of times already, there's no substitute for the fresh stuff in your cooking, and it just really makes you happy. The aroma in your house alone and the visual color that they give, it's a beautiful gift in nature. So I encourage you to grow your own, try your hand at experimenting with all of these types of herbs and even more that you can find at your local nursery.